Well, I know I am the last today, so thanks for hanging in there, and thank you for the invitation, Zaki. Thank you. I really am so happy to be back here at Athar and participating. That one. Well, I have to say I'm also presenting on behalf of Ana Almagro, who sends her regards. And she wishes she could be here. I can move over here. She wishes she could be here, but she's occupied. Together, we have worked only in about half of the region. We consider ourselves fortunate to have worked in about half, so we really only know about half of it. Okay, which one is it? That one. Okay. Well, of course, the first thing that we think about when we think about this region are the horrible things that are happening. Our sympathies and our frustrations go out to those who are dealing with these situations. It's always heartbreaking to see these images, but this is the first thing you think about when you think about this region. And some of the presentations have highlighted this. However, I don't want to speak about conflict or heritage damaged due to conflict, but I want to speak about another threat that we often overlook, and that is inadequate management. All 19 states in this region specifically mention severe problems with management. There's almost 400 reports at 55 World Heritage properties. Now, I'm only talking about World Heritage, but because there's a lot of data about World Heritage. But this can be correlated with all the other types of heritage. So if there's problems with management at World Heritage, there's probably management problems at other heritage sites. A lot of these sites report problems with management over decades. And now this is to compare how many reports. There's only 76 reports that specifically mention war, terrorism, or civil unrest. So you're looking at 5 times the number of sites reporting problems with management. Here's some examples. I was able to go through the database, State of Conservation database, which is quite rich. Well, Thebes in Egypt reports for 9 consecutive years problems with management. Here's a quote from the World Heritage Center. A number of high priority decisions have not been implemented or planned. Oman, 16 consecutive years it reports problems with management. The management plan was completed in 2010, but it hasn't been implemented. And this has happened a lot, where there's management plans, usually with help from outsiders, but not implemented or adopted. The latest reactive monitoring mission mentions that it needs a local management office. Volubilis, which I had the privilege of working at last year for a week or so, and I was in touch with Gaetano Palumbo. There is a management plan, and I got a copy of it. It's an excellent management plan, but it's not been implemented. Yet, I didn't get the impression that management was a serious problem there. Of course, it can be improved, but in Rabat, where I also did some preliminary work, wonderful management plan, but yet, and this is my pet peeve, my pet problem, that we have this huge Zaha Hadid structure going up in the buffer zone. And believe it or not, I searched for a reactive monitoring mission about this and couldn't find one. Anyway, okay. So to compare against other regions, looking at other places that report problems with management, and unfortunately this region comes out at the bottom. 67% of World Heritage sites report problems with management. And you can compare that with Africa, where it's only half. So the region reports problems with management more than any other region, and it reports it more frequently. Now, the State of Conservation database, which is very useful and informative, they have these 14 categories of different threats. Of course, threat number 9, you would expect, other human activities, conflict, problems with terrorism. But this is the one I'm going to focus on, 13, management and institutions. Now, within that threat, there are secondary factors which contribute to that threat. So the number one threat for heritage sites, World Heritage, we can make a correlation with others, but number one threat, management. And then the number one problem within management, the sort of contributing threat, is management systems and management plans, the secondary factor. And it's reported 345 times. So my question was, why? Why is this reported so often? Because some of the places I've been to, the management isn't that bad. So why? And of course, I have to use this as a correlation because I don't know in depth all of the heritage sites. So inadequate management is listed at, nearly twice as often as other events. But this region's not alone. There's problems with management at all other sites. Very interesting report by UNESCO recently, 2014. 3 out of 4 properties on the World Heritage List are negatively impacted by significant management, insufficient management. It's widespread. It gives you an idea, the total number of reports for all World Heritage sites. So it is at the top. So if you were to say, what's the number one problem with heritage? It's not conflict, it's management. And give you some examples here. I frequently travel to Dubrovnik, and it never had a management plan. Millions of visitors a year, doesn't have a management plan. They just recently finished it. I just got a copy of it recently. But it took the reactive monitoring missions, ECOMOS, and the World Heritage Center, many visits, many reports that say, please submit your management plan. And of course, the Game of Thrones doesn't help. It's really quite disturbing to see Game of Thrones tours in Dubrovnik. But Westminster in the UK, so wealthy, high-income nations also are lacking with management plans. The reactive monitoring mission said further request to the state party to finalize their management plan. They have since done it, but only recently, in this year. I was just in London and it's covered in scaffolding, but The Guardian declared it as one of the most disappointing tourist attractions. So management is a problem everywhere, particularly in this region. So why is it a problem? Why do the states in this region report it more often? Is it a cultural difference? Is it just that there's management plans and they're not implemented? And is this data giving the real picture? And then, of course, is management just a category that everyone just blames management? It's easy. I'll give you some ideas of why I think this is, some theories. Lack of resources, and this one's easy. Everyone says, we just don't have enough money to manage properly. And some of the quotes from the individual sites bear this out. At Giza, which has reported this problem over many years, they just say, we just don't have enough money. And then if you look at the reverse, those sites that do have management plans, it's the higher income countries. All of the heritage sites in Saudi Arabia have management plans. And in the Gulf region, they all have management plans. So you would think if the wealthier, higher income countries have management plans, it must be the problem, right? But, this is too easy to say they just don't have enough money. I don't think we could have all the money in the world and it wouldn't solve this particular problem. Is it lack of knowledge or skill? This too, I think, is too easy an answer. In Menkes, they specifically say there's need for institutional capacity building. And this is supported by research. There's been a series of reports by Luca Zahn from the University of Bologna, and he says that, we're trained as conservators, as architects, as archaeologists. We're not trained in management. So this would lead you to believe that it's just a problem. But I think we have to look deeper than that. Have management plans become too ambitious? I think this is a likely candidate. I know this is not in the region, but it's close by. I'm working in Makli in Sindh in Pakistan. They just finished their management plan of 7 volumes. It's 100 pages per volume, 700 pages of management plan. I think it's a bit of overkill. In fact, it's so much information, it's not useful. So we're doing a new management plan, an abbreviated management plan. Or is it lack of political will? Or is it that there's no set formula for a management plan? Or is it just a boring topic? Do management plans include the right information? I looked at all of the completed management plans in the region, and only 2 had any type of financial information, which I thought was a bit strange. How can you call it a management plan if you don't know how it's going to be paid for, or if you don't know if it will be sustainable? Without funding, it's not going to be sustainable. According to the Nature Conservancy American Alliance for Museums, these are the 5 pillars. I looked for all of these things in the management plans, and most of them didn't have it. Okay, so where is all this going? Of course, the topic, which I'm really interested in the conference, is from documentation to management. Well, documentation is a very first important step. Recording the sites and the conditions and the problems, history, significance. But then the situation has to be managed. What do you do with that information? One of the speakers in the last session mentioned this. I think it's very important because information for its own sake is just information. We need to act on it. And without management, the documentation is an academic exercise. It's really good. It's good for exhibitions, but we need to use that to act. Well, yeah, there you are. I put you in at the last minute, the last line. Well, we want to preserve the original. We want to use that information to manage the site. Well, too often the documentation, it's focused on capturing the physical attributes, the context, the condition or environment with images, graphics, maps, digital. We've seen a lot, and they're really impressive. The fantastic 3D models that we saw yesterday, the satellite images from UNOSAT, of course the drone videos. I'm afraid I don't have any of those in this presentation, so maybe management is a bit boring. The laser scans is really fantastic, but we have to use that. So a much more difficult task is to use that information to manage the site, to improve management. And then what I say is to document the management. What indicators? How are we going to make sure that we're achieving our goals if we don't document the management? I mean, this state of conservation database is a good first start, but it's a very macro level. We need something at an individual site level. The periodic reporting system is good, but of course these are only for World Heritage sites. These are only for those sites that are very, very significant and with universal outstanding values. There's nothing that exists lower down. There are for museums and for collections, but not for sites. So I think we need some performance indicators, capacity to measure perspectives and monitor results over time to make sure that management is accomplishing its goals. And then documenting such attributes and indicators it's quite hard. I think it's easier to make a laser scanner than evaluate management with documentation. So clearly, in concluding, there's certainly management problems, whether this gives the full picture or not. There's management problems. I think that Athar and Ikram, they have their work cut out for them with both these twin problems of being in a region with half the World Heritage in danger list. You have half of it. But also, on top of it, you have the worst set of management situations in the region. The issues, I think, with management are a combination of these things that I mentioned. Oops. What did I do? You know, there's some possible ideas. The documentation, I think it must be captured with an idea that it's going to help management. There needs to be an emphasis on management systems rather than management plans. If you look at what the operational guidelines say, they do not say you need a management plan. You need a management system. And it also mentions, importantly, that there's different cultural perspectives, resource, and other factors. I think a management system can be a halfway point to a management plan. I think we've gone too far with management plans that have to be all-inclusive, all-encompassing. I think we need to return to the basics to address this situation with management. One of my favorite books, very simple book, and I think we need to return to that simple idea of management. I think the rhetoric needs to be simplified, and I'm guilty of this myself, that the language is often confusing, especially for non-English speakers. I think that management systems must include financial details, how it's going to be paid for, how it's going to be sustainable. And then finally, I think with this group of people, maybe it's not as exciting as laser scanning or drone videos, but we have to develop a documentation system for documenting the management. You know, who is the manager? How is it going to be managed? What are the risks? And that's it. Thank you.